Ya, Bu dosennya.
Itu lucu-lucu loh.
Bener mau gini. Apa? Informasi dari Rosli.
Baru baca.
Nah, iya, makanya mutar.
Iya.
Paling enggak ini. Paling gampang diingat ulang tahun yang baru ini.
Maksudnya pas hari Kartini ulang tahun gitu. Belum terima. Masih sore mau yang begini kan? Aku jadi pacar sih kalau
Jurnal.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let us thank God Almighty for His blessing and for allowing us to gather once again today in good health and spirit. Welcome to this discussion hosted by Research Center for Public Spring, held on Tuesday, the 21st of April, 2026. My name is Ali Indias, and it is great honor for me to once again serve as your master of ceremony for this discussion. Honorable Dr. Atika Nur Alami, Head of Research Center for Public Spring, Dr. Irin Gayatri, our distinguished speaker, our moderator, and all participants joining us today. We are grateful to be gathered here today in good health to take part in this important forum on nickel governance in Indonesia, the interaction of multiple levels of administration, investment, and regulation. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin the forum, let us all rise and sing the national anthem Indonesia Raya. May I kindly invite our guests to rise.
Di sana
To officially commence our discussion, please join me in welcoming the head of the Research Center for Politics Green to deliver to opening remarks, Dr. Atika Nur Alami. The floor is yours.
Yes.
Okay, test.
Good morning, everyone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Morning, everyone. Distinguished speakers, colleagues, participants. Welcome to our today's discussion on nickel governance in Indonesia. The interaction of multiple levels of administration, investment, and regulation. The topic I think is really important and relevant for Indonesia, especially we know that Indonesia is the global powerhouse, for nickel, because the top producers of nickel itself. However, I think it's part of our discussion today. The real story is more complex. Nickel today is not just about a resource. Nickel is now about, kind of industry, energy transition, and also importantly, global competition among countries, including Indonesia. This situation, I think, creates big opportunities for Indonesia, but also big challenges. We can say, or we can discuss the challenges in terms of the various actors that involved in the sectors, but also the regulation that are evolving in the sector. In terms of the actors, I think some of the questions that we will discuss and explore today, actually, who make the decision of this nickel sector, whether it is a kind of a central government or local authorities, and whether they work together, whether they go to the same or different direction, and how actually the interaction between central and local government. I think these are some questions that we discussed today. And in terms of the regulation that are evolving, are these regulations aligned? Are they fair? Are they bring benefit for local communities? I think it's really important we will discuss today. Therefore, today's discussion, we will unpack the multi-layer realities of nickel governance in Indonesia. Together with our speakers today, we have Mr. Ricardo from Paris, and also Pak Herlambang that already sent his recording, the recorded presentation, and also our senior, Dr. Emilia Yustiningrum. We will hear, their insights on this issue about nickel governance in Indonesia. And I think the most important, actually, not only about how much nickel Indonesia has, but how well it is governed, right? How well it is managed. Of course, for the sake of people's welfare, for Indonesia's national development, and for the pursuit of national interests. I think that's all for me. Looking forward to our fruitful and lively discussion. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Atika, for your insightful remark and for setting the stage for today's important discussion. Moving on the main session, I would like to introduce our moderator, who will guide today's exchange of ideas. He is a researcher of the Research Center for Politics Green. Please welcome Mr. Mario S. Ramadan. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mbak. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mario Surya Ramadan. I'm a member of Foreign Policy Research Group and also National Security and Conflict Research Group. So today I will lead the discussions, our discussions on nickel governance in Indonesia, the interaction of multi-levels of administration, investment, and regulations. This is a timely topic and also very relevant to our research group, especially the Foreign Policy Research Group, and also we have Natural Resource and Conflict Research Group. Because last year, our research group went to Morowali for field research, and we found some interesting findings and also facts about how the nickel is managed and governed among every level of governance. So today we have guests from University of Paris Dauphine, Mr. Ricardo Fornasari, Dr. Ricardo Fornasari, and also we have our researcher, Dr. Emilia Yustiningrum, and we have also recorded presentation from Associate Professor Dr. Herlambang Wiratraman from Faculty of Law, Universitas Gadjah Mada. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker for today's discussion. Dr. Emilia Yustiningrum is a senior researcher at the Research Center for Politics, National Research and Innovation Agency. Mbak Emil holds a PhD from School of Governance and International Relations, Griffith University, Australia, through Australia Awards scholarships, and master degree on humanitarian action from the University of Groningen, Netherlands, and bachelor degree on international relations from Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. She has expertise on international politics, foreign policy, Indo-Pacific, and disaster management. Her current publications is a book chapter titled Seizing the Minilateral Movement in the Indo-Pacific, Indonesia, and also the other publications is Indonesia's response to the transformations of the Quad and Springer, published by Springer. The publication examines how Indonesia's foreign policy has responded to the growth of multilateralism in the Indo-Pacific region under the administration of Jokowi. And please, Mbak Emil, the floor is yours. 15 minutes on. Thanks.
Thank you, Mario. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So today I would like to share what our team has done so far, especially for the team of foreign policy. As Mario already mentioned, that last year we went to field research in Palu, Central Sulawesi, also in Pahodobi, sub-district of Pahodobi, where the location of the biggest Chinese investment in nickel Indonesia through the Indonesia Morowali Industrial Park in Midland. And we were lucky because when we interviewed the officer from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, we got the permission to have a tour inside the IMIP to see what is the IMIP look like, the building, the mining, the workers, the construction workers, including all the facilities that they have. And today I would like to highlight one of the findings from our research, especially on the interaction of multi-level administration and how it's intersect with regulation and investment in Indonesia as well. Next, please. So for the presentation, I would like to focus on two things. The first one is on how the national regulations apply, especially on mining, including Sukarno, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, and Joko Widodo. I a little bit scared about in Suharto's period because the problem on mining actually started during the period of Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. And also on how this regulation give impact or effect to the nickel industry, especially in Indonesia, Morowali Industrial Park, even in Pahodobi in Central Sulawesi. Next, please. So basically, the regulation about the mining is not a single issue. It has intersect with other issues like agriculture, and then plantations, and then energy, etc. But in the preliminary regulation, Sukarno only focusing on the interrelation between mining and agriculture. Next, please. In terms of nickel, the important thing started during the period of President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, because he established the law number 4 of 2009 on the mineral and coal mining. It was followed by regulation in the national level. Not only law, but also the governmental regulation. The difference between the law and governmental regulation here is that the law manages more
common or a more general thing, which is governmental regulation, maybe there is more specific that's not being elaborated further by the law, and that is being elaborated by the government regulations. And there was the government start develop national regulation on mining, still focusing on coal and mineral, but there was the foundation of how the nickel industry started in Indonesia. Next, please. It has important foundation, especially during President Joko Widodo. As we know that Joko Widodo, during his first term, he developed strong relations with China. And by aligning Joko Widodo Global Maritime Forum into China Belt and Road Initiative, he started to approaching China to do multiple projects, especially on connectivities, energy, electricity, also mining. And he invited Xi Jinping. He visited China in 2014 and then 2015, 2016, 2017, minus in 2018. But during 2018, there was Vice President Yusuf Kala who visited China, and he concluded some of the agreements, including on mining, nickel industry, and also the so-called of the Bandung-Jakarta bullet train. Okay, back to Joko Widodo. So there was the need to improve the nickel rates region in Indonesia. In order to do that, we need to acknowledge that the way the China government approaching Indonesia is not only happen in the head of government, like President Xi Jinping and the President Joko Widodo, but it's all happened in ministerial level, and also going down into provincial level, and also district level and diaspora. So they use this. And how to make things smoother, the Joko Widodo create the program, the project on nickel by creating presidential regulation still in 2016. Well, it's renewed into 17, 18, and 19, and 20. So more or less during his first term, he concluded. So even though the presidential regulation changes every year, but there are one thing remain the same, which is the region of rich nickel rich region in Kuala Tanjung, Sumatera, in Ketapang, Kalimantan, in Morowali, Central Sulawesi, and Konawe, Southeast Sulawesi, and Banten, Sulawesi, and including of Maluku, remain there. So it was carefully taken out in the president regulation that the nickel region is part of the government project, especially by the so-called national strategy project or project strategies national. And the difference happened in 2019 when the President Joko Widodo, through the president's regulation, mentioned that company are only able to import electric vehicle component provided by the existing plant that do not manufacture on equivalent component, then on the development of national electrical vehicle and domestic battery industry. It's mean that in order to support the electric vehicle, the government through this various presidential regulation developed the nickel industry to support the electricity vehicle. Next, that was how the regulation happened in presidential level. But then, in national level, it's applied in the lower regulation. So even though there are the presidential current regulation through presidential regulation, but in order to implement it, rationalize it in a more cost-effective way, the government developed regulation in the ministerial level, especially in the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. So with the development from 2016, 2019, 2020, and then 2021, and 2021. But basically, the industrial complex here, the nickel industrial complex is a national vital object. What does it mean? It means it's being protected with government regulation, presidential regulations, the applying of minister regulation to provide the land, to provide the budget, to provide the personnel, to allocate within the ministries, and also to involve the military to apply the security in the regions. So by applying this industrial complex as national vital object, Joko Widodo tried to protect it through various levels of regulations. And this is international level regulation. And in 2020, he created Omnibus Law on job creations. That's one of important stepping stone here, because for the last few years, especially the previous government, when they want to involve foreign investment, there are very long and long list of requirements that the foreign investor has to follow. But by the creation of Omnibus Law, Joko Widodo cut some of the law that make the foreign investor becoming easier. And one of the one related with the nickel industry is that even though there are calculation on how much benefits of the Indonesian government will get from that, the central government get from that, or the provincial government get from that, but there are less calculation on the environmental impact of the nickel industry. So that Omnibus Law makes some easiness for investors while not really into calculating the environmental impact of the mining for what society, for what the local government, and also to what the central government in the. So this is like the important, but we can say not really positive. So move on to the next one, next slide, please. So besides securing the regulation in the national level, like presidential level, and then another law or governmental regulation, and again, how to make things work, he created the ministerial level regulation, particularly on the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. And it was a systematic and a structured move that he created so many regulations starting 2015, 2017, 2018 until 2020. So on how the diversification of nickel industry can happen. Like I mentioned before, that in each nickel region, let's say that we face it in Central Sulawesi and Palu, or in Ahodoori sub-district in Central Sulawesi. The industry needed the land. The preliminary was 1,000 hectares. And then who provides the land? By using the multiple level of regulations, start from presidential regulation, and then the law, and then capital regulations, and then the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. This is how the government provided the land, the money, allocate the resources, allocate the human capital into how the nickel happen and start working there. Currently, when we visit in May 2025, EMIP is not a single company. There are more or less 50 smaller companies that combine into one industrial complex. Most of them from China, even though there are some from Indonesian-based mining company belong to Sandiaga Uno and some other politicians from Gerindra. But the way the government securing their existence is by securing the regulation from the central level and the governmental level, national level, into ministerial level. And then we can move to the next slide. how it works in the provincial level. So it's like a top-down process. The diplomatic relation between Indonesia and China, and then the top resulted into some agreement, and then the government securing into presidential regulation, into law, into governmental regulations, into ministerial level regulation. But how this regulation can apply in the provincial level? So by utilizing governmental regulation in 2019, the government provide incentive and easiness for the investment in the local level. That's how, especially for the legal risk regions, like such as in Palu, Komodo Basin, and Sulawesi, there are easiness to apply for permit. There are easiness to apply for develop the industry, and there are easiness to get the location and the land and how the enlargement process of the location. And hence, as a top-down process, it's make the provincial has to attach with it. And in some point, there are calculation on the cost of benefit, but in the cost of IMIP, Indonesia Morowali Industrial Park, the government only calculated on the benefit, but there are less calculation of the environmental impact, the impact of the society, and how the process of relocation and enlarging process that create a conflict with the local community. So, but through the regulation, the one who's of the government has to be in the professional level and the government. So they're the one who has to face the anti-society, the demonstration, etc. But above that, there are laws that protect them. And then this is how the top-down regulation giving permission for the provincial level to create the law. And then move to the next slide. Then, next slide, please. Okay, this is how the district level. So from the top one, central level, and the provincial level, and the district, etc. It's not only during starting during Joko Widodo, but there are foundations during Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono period, especially on the law of 2014 on industrial affairs. In Article 11, it mentioned that the government developed provincial development, and then the head of the district built the district level development. It's mean it's a mandate to do a top-down order. And by utilizing this, since in 2021, there are local regulation of it of North Morowali on the Morowali Design Planning starting 2021 until 2041. So it's level 20. And that district manages the regulation on industrial complex on food, on agriculture, on business, on textile, and metal and non-metal mining. So since mining and non-metal mining is one of the things that being governed by the district of Morowali, North Morowali, then how the start of IMIP happened there. And there was like the open door for the local express, the foreign influence in the local area, especially in the legal restrictions. And we will, how this regulation impact to IMIP. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay. Okay. As I mentioned before, the IMIP is a national strategic object. IMIP enlargement from 1,000 hectare to 3,000 hectare into 5,000. Who does the enlargement? With the head of provincial government and district government, they're the one who has to face the rising of demonstration, the rising of unhappy community to be relocated to other places that, because their land, their farm becoming a part of the industry. One thing that we recognize during our fieldwork is that even though IMIP has a basic minimum wages salary for the worker, but most of them still unhappy because it still follow the minimum wages in Central Sulawesi. It does not really give much for the mining. Since the industry provide more or less 510 trillion rupiah in a year in 2025, but the welfare of the mining worker is not as good as other things. And also, there are many facilities that the government provides to one thing. I think we can do that at the next slide. And how they impact our people. Last slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So since it is a big company, 50 nickel companies combined in there, most of them China, some of them Indonesian based. The government put it is a one-stop service. It's a national strategic project, national vital projects. So it's a one-stop service for IMIP. And also it involves a foreign mining worker, especially from China. So let's say from 100,000 mining workers, there are about 30,000 Chinese mining workers. And in the compound IMIP, there are custom office for the distribution of goods in and out of the country. There are immigration office for the distribution of in and out of the human, the worker. And also there are airport and then going a big airplane like the type of Boeing 737 or smaller airplane for mobilization of worker from overseas and also for official visit of the Indonesian government. And also there are clinics and there are two ports, Batuvia and Nakota port that connect for international shippings. And also there are 3 times catering service for the mining workers. In a big compound, there are many facilities to regulate the goods, their custom, to regulate the human, their integration, to mobilize the people, their airport, to mobilize the goods to other countries, there are ports, the seaports. And this is how the government developed IMIP into one-stop service. And if we sometimes read or heard the news that why people complaining or maybe not well informed that there are airport in South India. Actually, when we read through all the regulations, so from presidential regulation, the law, the government regulation, the Ministry of Mine and Energy Resources, and the law from the provincial and district, those things, those facilities. So basically, it's governed by these multiple regulations and ST. And this is how we see the enlargement of IMIP for the last 10 years, because basically it started in 2015, and when we visited in 2025, they celebrate the 10th year of existing IMIP in Central Sulawesi. And they keep expanding from 1,000 hectares into 3,000 hectares, and the next one into 5,000 hectares. And I think this is the last share from our team from the Center for Politics. And I would like to thank our team members, myself, Ibu Irin Kirasai Kayati, Pak Mario Surya Madani, Ibu Kanela Bibliandari, and Pak Siswanto, and also Ibu Devi Tenawar for keep doing research on this issue of intelligence.
Thank you, Mbak Emil. Please give a round of applause from Mbak Emil. Yeah, thank you very much for the very detailed and comprehensive presentation. Mbak Emil has unpacked the transformations of regulations especially from the Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono's administration until the Jokowi's administrations, and also Mbak Emil mentioned about how China approached Indonesia in multi-layers governance to smoothen their implementation of investments, and also how omnibus law has bypassed all the regulation that previously hindered the foreign investments in mineral sectors, and also Benil has shared the situations in IMIP and the social and ecological problems in Morowali. So no wonder Benil can explain in very detail because she has very complete research notes, so among other members. So if there were exams, there were exams after the research field, then I definitely would copy her research note. So the next one, we have Dr. Ricardo Montari. He is a senior lecturer at Pathé Dauphine University, PSL. He holds a PhD in private law from the Paris-Nanterre University and the University of Bologna. His research adopts an interdisciplinary approach, drawing on law and political economy. And his most recent works examines how law shapes power relations and unequal exchange in global value chains. And his materials for energy transition and inclusive sustainability research project was awarded the BSL Young Researchers Starting Grant, adopting an interdisciplinary approach. The project analyzed the impact of the governance of critical raw materials by the European Union and resource-rich states on human rights, worker rights, and environmental protections. So the floor is yours, Ricardo.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mike, for this presentation and introduction. Thank you, Emilia, for your super interesting presentation. Finally, I've understood the different layers, all of the different names of all the regulation at the Indonesian level, and thank you for organizing the this seminar and for inviting me to share a little bit of what I found here. So my research is also about Indonesian governance, but I wouldn't dare to talk to you about this here, and I'll focus more on the interaction between Indonesian nickel extraction and European Union due diligence. But before starting my presentation on my findings, let me a little bit more explain like the research project at more general level. Next, please. Yeah. So I am a research fellow at the UGM at the Center of Law and Social Justice with Professor Erlambang, and the project in relation to Indonesia is it concerns the Indonesian governance of people. And the broader research project, as you say, is project which is titled Materials for the Energy Transition and Inclusive Sustainability. The idea of this general project, which has got financing from my university, is to explore how resource-rich countries can regulate their natural resources to keep a larger portion of value within their boundaries, or how and if they cannot. And to see how this interacts with the global regulation and regulation from the global north, and what it produces for workers' rights and also for the environment. So the idea is contrary to what it is usually done in Europe or the US, is to start from the resource-rich countries and to see what these countries do. And this also related to a preliminary finding from my fieldworks here in Indonesia and also in Chile, that the fact that Europe, we always speak about international regulation, European standard, as if they were the center of the world, but in reality, what really shapes critical raw materials extraction are structure of governance and regulation in the global south. They are more and more important, so I wanted to start from different perspectives. That's why also in this project, I have different research assistants from each country. For example, there is Rosie Sadiq here, who's a researcher, and so the idea is also to start from a different perspective. The 4 countries of the project are Indonesia, Zimbabwe, Chile, and Madagascar. For the moment, I've realized we work in Chile and Indonesia. This is my second time here. You're a beautiful country. I'll try to go to Sulawesi the next week, so let's see what I found and what I find. But to say that I'm doing field work in all the countries of the project, which has a global scope. Okay, so next please. Today I'll speak about due diligence and the critical raw materials, but my work on due diligence is not only related to critical raw materials, but it has a more general approach in relation to policies at the global level. And I've published some papers, book chapters, especially with two colleagues, one is Vincenzo Maccarone, who's a sociologist from a Italian university, and the other one is Rachel Griffin, who's a researcher from Sciences Po in Paris, studying the effects of the due diligence. And we approach due diligence as a tool mostly to empower companies to regulate the issues of human rights and workers' violation at the global level, and at the European level as a strategy to try to produce a fix to capital accumulation, profitability crisis, and legitimacy crisis. That does not work. But so let's start with the due diligence, maybe in the next piece. So the general context in which the EU regulation of due diligence, and I speak about the EU to be like general, but we also have like national legislation at the EU level, as we see in a moment, is that the global value chains are the main form of production and exchange in contemporary capitalism. Okay, and so that also the activities of extraction and smelting are organized through the global supply chains, as you said before. And in this context, of course, there are different interests and perspectives of businesses, transnational actors, states that are at stake. So the critical raw materials are a factor of industrial development for resource-rich countries, but at the same time are the sites where workers' exploitation and environmental degradation occur, as you highlighted. And the issues of global value chains are deeply entangled with economic practice, right? So as we have seen with the COVID crisis, and we have seen today with the genocide in Palestine and the war against Iran, and with a lot of spillover effects, right? The sulfur crisis, that's like a lot of sulfur passes through the Gulf, and the Strait of Hormuz is creating crisis in the mining sector because of strategies of and techniques of smelting. So at the global level, and also national and subnational level, there are a lot of attempts to regulate global value chains, and also so global value chains of critical raw materials. Next, please. In this context, one strategy that has been put forward, especially by the global north, is the due diligence legislation. What does it mean, due diligence? In very general terms, it means that the companies, transnational companies that drive the value chain should perform due diligence in order to prevent the risk of violation of human rights, of environmental degradation, and to mitigate those risks or repair the harmful effects. Okay. Due diligence has a very long story of development. In some sense, it could be read as a response of the global north to the new international order proposed by the global south. But more recently, it has been advanced and coherently developed by an international law scholar, which is Raggi, an American international law scholar, as a strategy at the beginning of the globalization, as it is intended in liberal terms, to try to mitigate human rights risk. Okay, and it was at the same time a strategy to account for those risks, so try to prevent them, but recognizing, or at least announcing the legitimacy of those structures of production. So it was not a way of contestation of globalization, as like the no global movement at the beginning of the 2000s, but it was most a way to account for some risk, to try to curb them in order to legitimate the structures of production and exchange. Okay, this at the beginning has developed through a lot of structures of like voluntary due diligence, so what is called soft law. A lot of studies have been done about that. There are the UN guiding principles, the OECD guiding principles, etc., etc. But the studies, apart from the discourse that has like been there for like 20 years, and has also recorded other initiatives, the findings are that it's largely or totally ineffective. And this ineffectiveness in protecting human rights has led to the rise of mandatory due diligence, so enforced through what is usually called hard law, especially in Europe. Okay, this has been in relation to hard law, especially European perspectives. And so we see, next please, a lot of due diligence regulation at different national level, while the two most extensive, because they are general, are the French law in 2017, the German law of 2021, was in 2023, and now we have the directive of the European level of 2025, which has been subject to a saga of modification, which says a lot about the state of the European Union, and it is now into force, revised by the omnibus legislation. But it is almost toothless, okay? And we have like national regulation for limited factors. Next, please. I interpret, and maybe be clear in a moment, due diligence as a fix. So the general perspective is that the capital constantly seeks fixes, prices, and accumulation, prices that can be priced in profitability, and prices of the legitimacy of capital. And I think we are in a phase where both prices are overlapping. And there are various kinds of fixes, so spatial fix, the technological fix, the financial fix. And so given that we are in a crisis of profitability, but also an environmental crisis that puts into danger the accumulation of capital itself, in the European Union, there has been a moment, maybe this phase is ending, but a moment where European Union tried to foster a socio-ecological fix to this crisis through the Green Deal, and the directive on the due diligence is part of the regulation of this socio-ecological fix. Okay, next please. So in my research about corporate due diligence and critical raw material extraction, I wondered whether this legislation can curb an unequal economic and environmental exchange between core and periphery countries, or whether it does not transform these unequal dynamics of power and value appropriation, and other kind of regulations, so national and subnational regulations are more relevant. Next, please. And the preliminary finding that I'll try also to broaden in scope to make this field more, and next one is that due diligence has no impact at all, not only to Indonesian extraction of nickel, but to extraction of raw materials at the global level. Let me say that this was not obvious because theoretically at least, due diligence laws can be relevant. So not only for the directive that has just entered into force, but I mentioned French and German law. As you know, of course, Eramet, which is subject to French legislation, is active with Weatherblade. And you know also that Indonesian nickel is used in many batteries for Western cars, especially in German cars. Okay? And there's the German law. So at least theoretically, both laws are relevant. And so these laws could have produced a specific effects in the way nickel extraction is realized, both in terms of employment and in terms of environment. And what I found in my interviews is that these laws have no impact at all. So first of all, because the actors, and when I say the actors, I mean the ministers, the companies, the workers, the NGOs, so all set of different actors with different positions in the context of extractions, and no knowledge of this legislation. If they have no knowledge, of course, the legislation has produced no effects at all. And second, another like empirical finding is that the extraction and the smelting practices are the same, respective of where the nickel goes. So either the nickel goes to China or European Union or go to China and then to European Union, there is no differences in the kind of practices realized in the extraction and refining Portugal. So the due diligence legislation in this respect do not raise standards, does not create segmented markets. So it does not segment the markets for a specific nickel that will finally go to the European Union and other nickel that go to other kind of markets. So we can see that this regulation, next please, have different limitations. First of all, it is elaborated by the European Union without, or European states with no consultation with the affected countries, so it produces kind of neo-colonial path and problems that we have already seen with palm oil issues, and of course, a longer historical perspective. It is very limited in scope because it concerns only very large corporations. It is limited in the rights that are covered, and especially it is focused, which is maybe the central point, on procedures rather than outcomes. It means that all this regulation is focused on what the companies say and what they put forward in so doing, instead of achieving the real outcome. For instance, higher wages, or for instance, better protection, better tailings treatment. Next, please. And what I will say just now is, with this starting, is the result of interviews not only here in Indonesia but also in Chile. So Chile, where I started lithium, which is completely different as kind of techniques, as kind of production, kind of actors involved. And there too, the answers about due diligence in European regulation were very similar to the answers that I got here in Indonesia. And if I have to summarize, I can say that ESG, and it has been told to me many times in a very explicit way, does not in reality concern the workers or the human rights and the environment. It's all about profitability and capital accumulation. So these factors, instead of, we are misled if we read these issues and standards as a tool to protect workers' rights, but are more a tool of governance, of capital accumulation. And a lot of public officials, and especially of companies, officials told me when they spoke about the due diligence that the main focus not workers, but is about investment and financing. So that due diligence in reality is particularly important to protect investment. First, because the banks and the institutional actors need to put this in advance, also for the different consumers. And so in this respect, ESG is a tool not to protect the workers or the environment, but to protect the investment. So it protects the investment from a lot of different risks, like credit risk, reputational risk, social environmental conflicts. And it can also be put forward to curb workers' issues and grievances. So when workers complain about something, the companies put forward ESG, and the discussion becomes about the company code of conduct, etc. And also environmental claims, when like communities complain about something about the environment, the issues about ESG standards are put forward in order to curb and divide the community there. This can be said also, like for instance, of Indonesian corporate social responsibility legislation that has been used as a tool to obtain something from local governments, as you use it as a tool to obtain something from the governments, but it has been used as a tool also by communities. Next, please. So here is a little scheme to show how, and I have elaborated this scheme on the basis of two different interviews with officials, companies, executives here in Indonesia and in Chile. It was really starting that the result of what they were saying were more or less similar, that the ESG in reality is to protect the investment of extraction and to protect the credit investors, the extractive companies, and also the state from the different risks and social conflicts that could be developed in relation to this. Next, please. So what might be done? First of all, I think that what might be done should not be decided in Europe or in the US, but in the resource-rich countries. So in some sense, the approach of due diligence and global standards is flowing in the basis because it's a top-down, but from those who have the resources and should profit from these resources because they bear the cost, right? But in relation to the EU, and with much modest, can we say that the EU is declining in the global world system, some sense semi-peripheralizing. And this diminishes its power to set the agenda and also the rules of the global market. And I think that this sequence of the deal is illustrative of this point. Another approach could be to develop a cooperative approach with countries in the global south instead of trying to put forward top-down regulation, recognizing the right to regulate their resources as part of their sovereignty. And this would be exactly the opposite of what they has tried to do with WTO claims against Indonesia. And also recognize that the best way to protect the borders and the environment is to accept the fair distribution of value. So it's not about setting standards that become comply with the checklist, but just paying higher prices and putting forward the best purchasing practices in order to realize a fair share of value. And finally, to introduce stronger safeguards for trade unions and environmental rights. I think that these are the best way to advance, and I'm eager to know your perspective about all this. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Carlo, for your presentation. And Carlo has explained about how the regulations in governance and actually in global south that really matters for the different governments around the globe, and also the DPC and also the due diligence and the ESG factors in to tackle the environmental and also sociological problems in the nickel-rich regions. And there's a publication from Marianto Saranj. Maybe you have read this about the title is Clean Cars, Dirty Nickel, about the Indonesia, China, Germany nickel supply chain for EV batteries. So the nickel from Indonesia, which produced from the dirty process, has caused many social problems, workers' problems, and also ecological problems. Actually, produce the so-called clean cars, which use the EV batteries. And maybe you should also interview him.
I have contact with him.
And then, so we move to the next presenter. We have a recorded presentation from the Associate Professor Herlambang Perdana Wiratraman. He is an Associate Professor and Director of the Research Center for Law and Social Justice at the Constitutional Law Department, Faculty of Law, Universitas Gadjah Mada. He is a member of ALMI, Indonesian Young Academy of Science, and also he earned Master of Arts in Human Rights and Social Development from Mahidol University, Thailand, and PhD in Law from Van Vollenhoven Institute, Leiden University Law School. Please play the record.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for being it's really organized in facilitating this seminar related to nickel industry in Indonesia. And we, as a research team, really happy to discuss about this issue, especially dealing with the specific on law issues. I would like to share actually several preliminary working and preliminary findings regarding to national strategic projects based on the national laws on omnibus law on job creations. As we have known that since Jokowi's administrations, such government already enacted the law on job creations, and due to several designs, which is clearly referring to the facilitating of investment, and at that time, actually, what we could reflect from what Jokowi's administration would like to get actually, or adopting oligarch politics interests in order to exploit natural resources excessively without considering principles and also human rights, and as well as affecting to environmental damages. And therefore, when we decide to do research on legal industry, we prefer to see several locations which are clearly connected from such legal industry, and one of the research locations that we choose actually Opi Island, a small island in Philippines. And based on our preliminary findings, actually, since we use interdisciplinary studies of law and society, what we could reflect from Opi Island is really tremendous bad situations due to so many violence and also forced evictions happen at ground, while at the same time environmental degradation happening at ground, and no responsibility or accountability, while at the same time the government always try to convince us on safety or protecting environment. Well, as we have known that Opi Island is small island, but large number of nickel industry actually occupied in that island, and people can be easily removed from their houses, and also they can what is that sort of like sustainable livelihood disappear due to such removal, and also they could not work properly in that area due to massive disruptions because of the impact of nickel industry, especially the surface waste, and affecting to not only in the island but also in the sea. Therefore, the people who live based on the prison box activities, they could not achieve what they would survive in order to maintain their livelihoods properly. Of course, this is not surprising here, due to omnibus law on job creation actually has been enacted in the framework of autocratic legalisms, which is clearly a message of part of the abuse of power, no participations, and also strengthening illegality in order to accommodate such national projects. And such national projects has been underpinned by the Indonesia's legal system due to the enactment of neoliberal paradigm in legal reform, as well as adopting the predatory elites interest, state interest in nickel industry, and they really avoid the responsibility of that, and even what we have seen from time to time is really mass destructions at local level, and what could be a fundamental message in these situations? First, as we have known that we have Article 33 of the constitutions regarding to Indonesia's economic socialisms. Second, due to such article, actually it's clearly violated by national strategic projects due to nickel industry, and of course it's far from ideal to protect citizens. And the third, actually what we have seen is due to low participation, forced exhibition, and also try to manipulate the job creations. Actually, people at local growth has been easily removed from their proper works and decent life. And really unfortunate for the people that they could not seek justice due to a very weak constitutional system happen in that area. Although there is possibility to challenge such policy through, for instance, administrative court or constitutional court, but these are, of course, serious problem for the people, bringing this case to the formal judiciary process due to uncertainty or judicial uncertainty. And second, of course, this is costly, and therefore they need other social solidarity in order to defend their constitutional rights and ground. And hence, I would like to relate these reasons really, especially related to how we can map the issues of human rights at ground, since so many human rights violations happen in that small island, in Hopi Island. So that's my brief presentations. Perhaps this is really helps to support the discussions at brief today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Herlambang has shared about how the reform of regulations, and especially the omnibus law, has benefiting the oligarch, and also he shared a critical view on how the implementation of nickel industry in Hopi Island, and also which highlight no participation from the people, and also the people suffer from the nickel industry in there. So there is a mantra from our President Joko Widodo when many people protest his policy or his regulations, just bring it to the formal judicial process. But we all know that the result, of course, will not support the people side. So we now will have a discussion. Any from the audience have questions? Maybe any questions from the audience, or yeah, Sasa. Yeah, Sasa.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Emilia, also Dr. Ricardo, and also Dr. Herlambang, maybe visit here for the this event. Maybe I have a specific question for Dr. Emilia, and then maybe Dr. Ricardo can also add to this. So this, I think the terms of natural resources has always been dividing our geopolitical condition, and we know that in your research you also focus on how actually in specifically in nickel we have our goals to create a new industry for IT and everything like that, but we also have this substantial willingness to open the market to those that needs this and that we can benefit for this. And I think from what you have told us, what I want to know next is who in a term of foreign countries or negara mitra, who is the one that benefited from this dynamics in Indonesia. And in a term of Europe, I mean, like when we talk about humanizing industry in the term of having standard and everything like that, how's the dynamics of the dialogues goes when we talk about having the resource versus really putting that standard to work. So maybe that question first for the two speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasa. Mbak Tika.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Emilia and to the other for the hosting presentation. Sorry, I think it's interesting that we talk again about the EU Green Deal. Actually, because before we had a workshop on EU Green Deal, I expect for Southeast Asia countries, including Indonesia, Malaysia, and some Southeast Asian countries. And yeah, I think I believe that due diligence one of the kind of a contested issue that probably it's hard to achieve by Southeast Asian countries, right? If we took the case of kind of this nickel industry, we know that through this due diligence, EU wants to make sure that the product that comes into should go through a traceability, kind of a process. Right? There's a traceability problems here. And we know that the nickel industry in Indonesia goes through, kind of a multi-layer chains from mining and then smelters, and then maybe the media is that probably mostly from China, yeah, and China, and also the batteries itself, and finally arrive at the EU manufacturers. So how can we deal with these traceability problems? How to measure how green the nickel is? That's the issue, right? I mean, how the EU make sure that the traceability problem will be, will be deal with Indonesia. And secondly, I think, as I mentioned, that the intermediary stage is located mainly in China. And how we deal with this jurisdictional issue, because EU cannot enforce the policy across its, beyond the jurisdictional rights, right? So it happens in Indonesia and in China, how EU will make sure that this due diligence requirement will be implemented well. Right? Yeah, that's my question. Maybe for Brother Ricardo.
Thank you, Mbak Tika. Good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to both of you, and also it's very good presentations. I would like to get more information from three of you, maybe both of you. If we talk about nickel in Indonesia, actually nickel is one of the most important in the global nickel supply, because compared with the coal, nickel become 60% of the global supply. But the situations not little bit very shift from the Canada company, which support by EU and also USA. investment. And of course, it is a part of the positions of a global North country. That's around 10 years ago. But today, maybe 2-3 years, since 2-3 years, we know that China become dominant in Indonesian nickel. And I would like to know more, what's the key challenges and impact on Indonesians? Because when we talk the geopolitical dilemma, Indonesia really difficult to get more benefit when China can make it directly a part of the global nickel supply, and also we can navigate, but US China navigate the nickel in Indonesia. So what's actually the benefit? The second one is about when we talk the economic structure, China really try to push the production in Indonesia. And in the near future, oversupply will happen. And it makes the situations of the global become changed. So what's actually the impact in the global dynamic between US and China in terms of the nickel production? Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Nuka. I give to Ricardo first the opportunity to answer the questions, and then by Derek. Yeah. Derek, please.
Thank you. That's a very interesting discussion, especially for me, because this is the first time that I learned something about the due diligence. So I'm very curious that your project is a comparative studies that you mentioned that you have already been to Chile as well. And this is the second time to Indonesia. So I would like to know more about how that you due diligence in terms of the legal extraction, especially in the state in Indonesia and Chile could implement it. So maybe you can share the finding of your research, the comparison between the two countries, especially on the implementation of the EU due diligence. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Very okay. Padu and then Pak Sis.
Thank you, Mario, for your opportunity, and thanks to Mbak Emil and Ricardo for your presentations. Dr. Ricardo, you remind me of Valentino Rossi. You have a similar face, maybe. Back to my questions to Mbak Emil. I want to know, and maybe you can elaborate more about the China factor on regulation on nickel in Indonesia. How Opung, the only man that has a great influence to this kind of China domination in nickel industry in Indonesia. And to Dr. Ricardo, I want to know more about the due diligence and HCG factors that you mentioned can be prepared as tools to smooth capital accumulation and not aim to protecting workers or the environment. So what the government do about this kind of situation? I think it's about the fairness, about the protecting the workers, local workers, or the environmental on local, especially local people in this where the industrial applying or positioning in some place in Indonesia. Maybe that's all. What I'm thinking.
Thank you, Madu. Sis.
Thank you, Ricardo, for your presentations. It's about the AU Indonesia Corporation justification of the regulations. In this case, in context of global value change. Now, as you know, there is the many actor in global value change. European Union and US, so Indonesia and China. So it is, I think, it's a good idea about the cooperation of the regulation of the regulation. It is give us effectiveness. But if there is no response from Indonesia, as long as you know that is the European Union is prepare regulation or something like this for barrier in Israel trade from product of Indonesia and China into European Union. Thank you.
Whether the European Union aware that it is barrier.
Yes, because in the last, I know that there is so many regulation who essentially is barrier from the product from especially from Indonesia. I think as long as you know, is the European Union is prepare something like this from the product maker from Indonesia into European market.
Thank you, Pak Sis. Maybe Ricardo, thank you. You go first to answer, and then. Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much for all these questions, these challenging questions. Maybe I can try to answer them if I can longitudinally. So because they have many points in common, so I can try to since the beginning, maybe the starting point. Sorry, is your question about the extraterritorial effect, and due diligence is designed as a tool that has extraterritorial effect beyond Europe. Of course, from a jurisdictional point of view, this cannot be done. And so what is the trick legally is that the companies who have to do the due diligence are the companies which are European or who sell more than a certain amount, which is a lot of products in the European market. So the idea, it's not like regular Chinese companies or Indonesian companies, but the idea is that to sell certain things in Europe, you have to do the due diligence. The big companies have to do it. So the idea is to challenge those companies who manage the chain and to impose them to do this due diligence. Then this has been changed across time and is not effective at all, but this is how the European Union tries to overcome the extraterritoriality problem. Of course, there is a cultural and political problem when you think, because the European Union thinks wrongly, in my opinion, it is like a regulatory power, it can set standards of the world. It's not anymore the case, as a lot of recent cases show, but there is also this self-projection as the person, the defender of human rights, etc., which is highly problematic and which always develop the future, right? From a discussion point of view. The second aspect is this a barrier. It could be. I don't think that the European Union is preparing something as with the palm oil. Okay, like where it was obvious that it was a barrier to Indonesian palm oil. As like everyone, when I made interviews about the European Union, we're not very much aware about the European Union apart from this stuff about palm oil, and everyone was unhappy about that. So I think that with nickel, I mean, due diligence in general doesn't concern just raw materials. I spoken about nickel because I research raw materials, but it's very general. It's not only about raw materials. And I don't think it will create barriers first, because in reality, the due diligence in some sense is a project that has already failed, which is not effective. So to create a barrier, you have to create something effective, at least partially, while the due diligence is not and will not be. French company is already compliant. If you look at the website of Eramet, which is the French company, it seems like a biological agricultural company, not a global mining giant. So it's not producing effect, and also because European Union as nickel, as Indonesia, as like almost an oligopoly of nickel production worldwide. European Union cannot renounce to Indonesian nickel, right? It could like exclude palm oil to use other kind of European oils, but it cannot exclude nickel. So I don't think it will work as a barrier. But it says a lot about how the European Union projects itself also with like its claiming at the WTO against Indonesia at the same time, like barriers to trade. Maybe the interesting thing, because you asked about the comparative case with Chile, is that it's not directly related to due diligence, but when the European Union was negotiating this agreement with Chile, as with the Indonesian, with Chile, European Union has different relationship, which is a little bit stronger. Also, it's more important from a commercial point of view, Chile for Europe and Europe for Chile. Like European in the EU, they were hysterical about this idea of lithium OPEC countries like Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia, which was not at all on the table in those countries, because if and like people that knew Chile perfectly knew that was not the approach of Chile, and that there was not any agreement between the two of them. This is it's a pity in my opinion, but at the same time in the agreement with the Chile, so they exclude this possibility to create agreement with other producing countries. But in the Critical Raw Materials Act of the European Union, there is the creation of OPEC compliance, because they provide for the possibility of countries to group together to buy resources that have more power against resource-rich countries. So at which point the European approach is biased. They cannot see reality at the same time for screaming against OPEC countries and creating in their regulation the OPEC compliance. Okay, so maybe this can illuminate the approach. And what about the question of the efficacy? I think in both countries it does not produce effects. So in Chile and Indonesia, the answer by company executives and by workers were more or less the same. It does not produce any effect on the ground, so it does not modify anything for works, etc. It does allow different companies to be part of like IRMA, international standards, to get a lot of funding, especially because during the neoliberal moment with the World Bank, especially, a lot of financing chains were linked to sustainability. And so to have this standard to purport some extraction of materials as sustainable could allow access to funding, which is of course fundamental. And what about the effects for workers? I would say that it does not protect them. So maybe different tools should be operated. At the same time, saying that the regulation of the European Union does not protect workers and the environment doesn't mean that the national regulation does. Okay, so but a different approach should be adopted for sure. And maybe I wanted to ask a question too, so, because you had a question about China, and I wanted to know your opinion about the recent trade agreements with the US and also with the EU. Its effect on the export ban, will it be modified because of these agreements or not? Because when I do interviews, it's an answer that I can't back in a clear way. And what do you think about the future of cooperation with China and also for further upgrading the supply chain? Thank you, Ricardo, and then Baby.
Thank you. I think for the question from Ricardo, may I extend the last one, because I would like to answer one by one from question from the participant team. And for Sasa, who get the benefit from medical industry in Indonesia? To be honest, it's very difficult questions, because when we see there are multiple effects on this. During Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, or the preliminary period of Joko Widodo, he was downstreaming in industries. Indonesia doesn't want to sell raw nickel, but want to sell processed nickel. But the Indonesian industry, Indonesian government does not have enough capacity to process the nickel. But then it's how the need to invite foreign investment. And then the foreign investment has a lot of specification and qualifications that it goes along the way into the condition of not only using the exit of the mining and then creating the smelter and then diversifying the project, but also we should highlight that when there is nickel mining, they don't get only nickel. There are any other thing too, like cobalt, like bauxite. And last time we did the interview, the government only regulate they get nickel. They don't regulate. There are additional resources they got too, like cobalt and bauxite. And also bauxite is one of the critical minerals they import in this industry. So I would say that most China's investment in Indonesia, they do the long-term contracts. We know that one of them, like Bandung, Jakarta bullet train, stay for 80 years, 80. Can you imagine that when China led Hong Kong to UK, it lasts for 90 years, but for one single train, it lasts 80 years. And then next month, our foreign policy team will go to Rempang, the development of Chinese investment on energy in Rempang Eco City. The investment will stay for 50 years. So the character of Chinese investment in Indonesia, it could vary 50 years, 80 years. And then we found from other research on ICA and the Indonesian government plan to renovate a new capital city into Nusantara, the investment stayed for 180 years. Can you imagine that? China led Hong Kong only for 99 years, but Indonesia investment for 180 years. I think it's quite long-term contract, long-term process of the invitation or the engagement of foreign investment in Indonesia. And what is the estimated benefits? Annually, the nickel industry sent 510 million rupiah to the Indonesian government. This is central government. But there are only like 350 billion. But only goes to provincial government of Central Sulawesi for about 300 million. So it less money. And we see that even though there are nickel industry, there are jobs creation, there are employment in the region. They are inviting not only mining worker, not only domestic, but also foreign mining worker. But in 3 provinces, the Central Sulawesi, the Southeast Sulawesi, and North Maluku is still one of the poorest provinces in Indonesia. So at one point, it increased the benefit of the government in specific industry, but in other part, it's created another problem. In provincial level, it's provide employment for small amount of people, but it does not upgrade the level of welfare of the provinces into a better one, because they are still the 3 poorest provinces in Indonesia, and we see that. So this is what we can say about what the benefit of nickel industries is. And then the question of Ibu Atika, I might be not really associated with the EU Green Deal, but in terms of the jurisdictional issues, we get through all the regulation on the nickel industries, from the president regulation, government regulation, Ministry of Energy and Resource Mineral, and then provincial level, and then district level. They are, the way they create image is that one-stop service is they want to doesn't have problem with this jurisdiction. In terms of mobility of worker, they have the immigration office. In terms of mobility of goods, they have custom office. In terms of mobility of foreign worker from abroad to Morowali, they have airports. And based on our interview, the work, they come from China, they do not come through Jakarta, they fly from China to Makassar to Morowali, or they fly from China through Manado to Morowali. So this worker, they did not come from China. So this is how they don't want the problem of jurisdiction to become one of the barriers, therefore they make it into one-stop service. And then when they develop the port, two ports, Batuvia and Labota port, those ports transporting nickel, processed nickel from the mining, and then in the distance like 5 to 10 kilometers away into the port, it is good directly to China. So this is the way that the flow of processed nickel apply, and the government manages that through multiple kind of regulation, and it is go through multiple paths to China. And this is what I can say about the investment of nickel industry in Indonesia. They know that there might be it's going to be the incoming jurisdictional issue, but by making them as a one-stop service, is at least the problem of jurisdictional issue as big as we could do. And from Professor Muka, how if China's investment on nickel, they supply nickel into the second biggest global nickel producer in the global level. Is that going to be oversupply, and what the impact on the global dynamics? And we need to see things in the bigger picture, that when we see nickel, it's not only nickel, but in the frame of critical mineral. In the critical mineral, there are rare earth elements, there are cobalt, there are bauxite, there are copper, there are nickel as well, and nickel is one of them. So this is part of the foundation on how the US, China are working in the critical mineral, because each of them try to find the biggest sources of the critical mineral. And Indonesia is truly one of the biggest sources of nickel to China to be part of the global river in the nickel. So if there are oversupply of nickel, but then China also investing in other type of critical mineral as well, like cobalt, bauxite, copper, etc., in other places of the world. So in this stage, they will do this. They will do this. They use the approaches that when the US tried to pursue security issue, they use the China use the approaches to the economic issue or key economic issue, especially in the developing countries, in the Southeast Asia, and also in India. And then Ibu Kadewati mostly on EU due diligence, we associate with that. But then a question from Pandu, and what is the role of Luhut Binsar Panjaitan and medical industry in Indonesia? To be honest, since the first term of President Joko Widodo and then the second term of President Joko Widodo, the way he orchestrated the Chinese investment is very systematic, very structured. He moved one by one negotiation with another, carefully from one term to the other, and then carefully orchestrated the meeting, the agreement, and then carefully orchestrated the regulation at home into the political. Even while he was the Minister of Investment and Maritime Affairs, he has the subdirectorate of KDJM, high-level dialogue for mechanism and cooperation, dedicated to cooperate with China. But then when the president, the ministry was dissolved through the period of President Prabowo Subianto, he moved into one of the important figures in the National Economic National Council. But even though his institution was not there anymore, but we need to say that China's investment are staying for a long time. I mean, what we know here is that energy investment in Rempang Kertang stay for 55 years, but the bullet train stay for 80 years. So the footprint, his power, he's not in government, but his effect of power is still there. And it's like, we know this. So it's becoming very important because anytime we get through each of the investment like nickel in Mawali and then green energy in North Kalimantan or in North Sumatra, we need to see whole companies and the way they play is a long compared to investment of Japan mostly lasted for 25 or 30 years, but the Chinese have like 50%. So the effect still has it. And so there's one question from Ibu Atika about the how green is the nickel. So from our field research in Bahodo, Central Sulawesi, even though the nickel industry try to develop electrical battery that is cleaner than the fuel vehicle, but in order to operate the machine, they need coal. The coal is not a green energy, and from the machine that operating from the coal, there are many environmental impacts to the society. It's like there are flying ashes all day long. So if we go there and we have white shirt, you will see white dot everywhere else. If you dry your clothes outside your house, you will see dots in your clothes. So it's very visible there. So it's part of the coal generated machine from the nickel industry. And also some people, because the machine running for 24 hours, 7 days a week, some communities suffering from noise pollution. Because the noise are very strong, so they suffer from it. So it has relations on while the ESG, economic and social impact has really been examined during the negotiation of the industry. This is how the rule of omnibus that cuts some of the important negotiation about the impact of mining, the impact of foreign investment on mining, but they don't really pay attention on the environment. And for Pak Siswanto, I think more about the EU due diligence and social and associated. Okay.
Can I add another question to my question?
Okay.
Which is like very technical and more because I know that mining nickel is linked also to cobalt. Extract nickel usually have cobalt too. Because one of the other case is Madagascar where I study cobalt, which is extracted in the nickel production. And in Indonesia is quite an important producer of cobalt worldwide. Why we never speak about cobalt in Indonesia and about given that it's such an important critical raw material, most of the cobalt come from cobalt. So there's a lot of problems in security also in supply chain about the war, which is terrible, of course. We speak about nickel, sometimes about bauxite. Is cobalt related also to downstream politics?
So the first question is that the current trade agreement with the US impacting the trade agreement with China. So we see from the character of foreign investment that they stay for very long time. We should stay in the US for another 8. So the number maybe it's not as high as the US investment in Indonesia or the US trade agreement in Indonesia, but because it stays for long, it's becoming a powerful weapon for the China to have engagement, to operate, to engage like geoeconomical tool for the development. So this is like kind of weaponized. The money is not as much as the US revenue, but the period is long. This is the way the weaponized economy between the trade or investment deal with the Indonesia and China. So it's kind of something different from the character of the investor in Indonesia. And also, we mentioned that in terms of critical mineral, there's not only nickel, there are also copper, there are bauxite and gold. I would say that Indonesia has a very long historical problem on with the copper, especially with the Timika remotes, but it's still unsolved whether actually how many percent the Indonesian government profit get the benefit from the free model. But currently, the most visible problem occur from critical mineral Indonesia is from the cobalt is mountain, bauxite is mountain, also as another element of critical minerals. But so far, this is the emerging problem occur from the nickel industry, because you might associate with the news that how many mining ores done from the nickel industry. Maybe there are problems or injuries or accidents toward other industry also, but nickel is the most visible, is the most intriguing, and also the most emerging problem that happen right now in country.
Thank you. Maybe we have 10 minutes, but we have a closing remark from Claire, but maybe closing statement from both of you, by Emil, Ricardo.
So I would say that critical mineral in the bigger picture is still very. This is also why we are the people who focusing on foreign policy from international politics, jumping into industrial investment, because it's not only one single issue, it's intersect with the changing of global environment, it's intersect with the grid power rivalries, and intersect how the grid power try to expanding their role in many areas by utilizing the issue of grid and why this is the.
Thank you, by Emil, Ricardo.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I wanted to thank you for inviting me, and for all your questions, I've learned a lot. So I'm really glad about this webinar, and I hope we can have similar here in the future. And yeah, I would say the same. You say critical minerals are like a focal point was the transformation of the global order. At the same time, but there are few different futures that can be worse, but would also be better. So I think it's a very important topic to study analytically and scientifically at the same time. Was kind of policies that after the people and can lead to a more balanced and peaceful order.
Thank you, Emil and Ricardo, for your presentation, also answering all the questions. Give applause for our speakers. Thank you to all the audience who are attending the discussions today. I will give the floor to Bayu for the to present Bayu. Okay, right.
Well, thank you so much for both of excellent speakers in our office at the moment, Dr. Emilia, Dr. Ricardo, and Herlambang, our old friend in Universitas Gadjah Mada. I also thank Dr. Achika Nur Ami as the head of our research center. Also distinguished the participants of today's discussion. I don't want to stall more of your time because I think it's near lunch, but what I can conclude from the conversation is that in Indonesia context, as a leading country of nickel producer, we have so many challenges, and one of the most important of those challenges is at the level of governance that must be aligned with national ambition and local realities. I think we had that discussion about environmental challenges and how Indonesia not assertive enough to put requirements on the investment vis-a-vis the environmental protection or risks. So I think the future might invite on those conversations. And local organization has started this discussion as well as some of international communities that have concern with environmental effect of critical mineral. I think what I can take from the discussion is that Indonesian government is the most important actor to ensure sustainable development
But of course, it should, I think, increase its leverage with partner in a way that could create fair investment. That in the end would also invite more responsible resource management. This is, I think, a bit irony because China had actually some document on business and human rights and also business and environmental rights, and they had released it 2 years in a row. But what conversation should be taken up by Indonesia is to what extent the China government had also implemented this document into their own investment efforts. That can also be part of the maybe future negotiation between China and Indonesia, for instance, with regard to the green investment, because China is so keen to campaign green investment and energy investment. So I think Indonesia can also play more influential role in that. But I think the last point with regard to the topic of governments today that I can also we read from the term of reference of the discussion is I think the task at hand on the Indonesian government, to what extent we can mitigate differences of perspective with regard to object strategy national, the national strategic project. How the central government see it, how the local government see it, how the central government invite local government to take part in the PSN, and how local government facilitate the needs of the local community with regard to the implication on the area being distinct as project strategy national. I have not known if any of this conversation taking place at the moment, be it in the local parliament, at the local level, at the provincial, and also district, right? In fact, we had one MGD with representative of Dewan Perwakilan Daerah, is a regional son from the affected region in Morowali, but we have not seen it in the, like national blueprint. Are we going to revisit national project, national strategy project, specifically on the critical mineral aspect? We haven't heard. I think that also related to how the government, intra-government ministries, the example would be the ministry where Pak Luhut was, having a heavy duty, but now it's diminished, being part of Dewan Ekonomi Nasional, the conversation that he involved in whatsoever management of critical mineral, unlike his variant, prominent variant. So without further ado, I congratulate all distinguished speakers and also distinguished participants to this discussion. And also, I hope we can also still meet in future. If possible, we could collaborate or, in writing or seminar activity. Thank you very much, Mario.
So with that, conclude our discussions for today. I think I thank you all for the speakers, Tika, and then also Bayrin and all the participants for the very fruitful discussions, and see you in the another sessions of our public discussion or seminars. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye.
Nanti baru mana lagi?
I think we should take a picture again.
Di depan. Apa ya? Karena iya yang waktu itu.
Di apa? Dibuka apa? Karena aku lagi. Barang nanti. Ada apa? Belum lagi. Aku belum lagi. Aku nggak ada ini ya. Lain baru tahun depan. Jadi bakal bikin lagi. Dari sampainya dari DKI. Sampai
Ada dulu dari ini kan bisa takutnya kayak ini kan perkembangan baru ada apa itu sama besarnya oh dengan cerita jadi banyak yang itu adalah di sini dalam rangka di mana itu nanti di paus mana tuh Raja Ampat juga oh bukan tapi sama yang di politik juga politik sama siapa sama CP bareng tapi bahwa ada di sini oh ya
Amin. Tahu nggak yang cukup buat makan itu juga.
Kita mau wawancara kita dua meeting di kantor. I know that. So you can do that interaction. Time to start application. Okay.
Because like if they are more, they will be
Yeah.
They were. And they will understand. Sorry.
Okay, so you can say.
Aku isi dulu deh. Penting untuk kita kelaparan diturutin karena pasti lapar. Ini lebih penting untuk
mobil listrik gitu. Yang saya tadi di situ aja bener itu kalau ada
Jadi Jumat ke saya ya.
iya relationship ya.
No, of course not. It's still right. The second time the first time I don't want to go to some. And then it's so difficult. Like the first time I stayed for 40 days, so I and now for like 3 weeks. So it's not long enough. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I will check. Then I go to Georgia. I stay in the center.
Oh.
Which one? I don't know. Me, I'm right near the library. I go to the library. I go to remote. Okay. Yeah. Let's stay in touch. Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you very much. Yes, I'll tell you. Yeah, and if you come